have the honor of introducing our speaker this morning. And I struggled with this one because everybody in this room knows Robert. We all know he grew up in Chatham. We all know that he went to Hampton-Sydney and then to Mississippi College State of Law and returned back to Chatham in '99 to start practicing in that town. We know that he served on Chatham Town Council and then went to the House of Delegates, then went to the Virginia Senate, and then he's been in Congress, just reelected to his third term. So I was sitting thinking, what do I tell an audience who knows Robert so well? What can I tell them? So let me tell you something I think we take for granted in this community. I had the opportunity, and some of you are familiar with this, I had an opportunity a couple of years ago that I was invited to testify before a congressional committee. When they invite you, they don't give you a lot of time to prepare. They usually give you less than 1 week's notice that they want you to come and testify. And so one of the first calls I made, it was on Workforce, one of the first calls I made was to Robert's office to say, guess what? I get to go testify before a committee. And so what do I need to expect? Robert rearranged his schedule to find time to sit down with me and to talk to me. Not as much about the content of what I was going to say, but just even to prepare me of what that's like to go before a congressional committee. Because for most of us, that's not what we do in our normal day-to-day business. And he really did try to coach me and mentor me about how to go and make that presentation and feel very comfortable about what that process would be like. And he did. He totally prepared me for that. The day of that meeting, when I went, Robert showed up. Now, Robert was not a member of that committee, but Robert showed up, and that hearing went on for almost 4 hours, and he stayed the entire time. Committee members did not stay the entire time, but Robert did. And at the end of that presentation, as I'm sitting there at the end of that day and I'm talking to people who live in that DC world and go to those types of events, every one of them said to me, I am shocked that your member of Congress came to a committee that he doesn't even serve on, sat here and participated in it for the entire time. We have never seen another member of the House do that when a local constituent was speaking. We've heard them, seen them show up. We've seen them, give them a little rah-rah, go for it, and then they typically leave. And I think that's something that we don't realize we have in this community. That's one of the beauties of living in a place like Southern Virginia. We know our elected officials. We know how to reach them on the phone and talk to them or see them at a breakfast meeting to share our concerns. Whether they serve on our local boards, our state boards, or whether they represent us in Congress, we have access to them, and more importantly, they're accessible and make themselves accessible to us. So on behalf of this community, Robert, I just want to thank you for what you do for our community every day, for the friendship that you give us, and invite you to come forward and share a few of your comments and perspectives this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Laurie, that is so nice. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and I thank you for the invitation. I always love being here. It is very much a homecoming for me every time I'm able to have this opportunity. I want to thank Laurie especially, as she was testifying before the Energy and Commerce Committee or the Workforce and Education Committee on the issue of workforce training, and I think that we all know, and you all know probably better than I, really how much work she has devoted to workforce training, how important it is. And when I think back on the 113th Congress, there are very few things that we actually were able to come together on between the House and the Senate and the White House and actually get done. Workforce training reform was one of those things, and that was because of the hard work of Laurie and others who worked so hard to get that done, and at a national level. So thank you, Laurie, for your work on workforce training, and I give her a hand. I also wanted to thank Lawrence Distributing for the sponsorship. Linda, thank you so much for everything you've done for the Chamber over the years and sponsoring breakfasts like this, and give the membership an opportunity, obviously, to hear from elected officials about what they're doing for their communities and for our community. but it also gives us an opportunity, gives me an opportunity as an elected representative to hear from you all. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the 113th Congress and talk about what I think we're going to see in the next Congress, the 114th. But I also want to leave a lot of time for questions. So be thinking about things that you'd like to ask about. And before I move on, I also wanted to recognize a couple of folks. First of all, I don't think, is Eric Deaton here? I don't think that he's here. But I tell you, I do want to salute him for his work, not only for the chamber over the time during his chairmanship, but really his complete and utter devotion to our community and to health care in Southside Virginia. And I think that we all kind of have lived through some of the harder times that we had as it related to the hospital, but I couldn't think of anybody who has worked harder and been more successful in really addressing the issues that we needed to address as a community. And I cannot say enough how much I admire and appreciate his service. And I was so sad to hear that when he he and his family decided to move on. But I think of Eric in sort of the same way I think of Don Merricks, who served in the House of Delegates for a brief period of time, and I was so crestfallen when he announced that he wasn't going to run again. But the kind of people that say, they're going to do what they have to do, but we're just glad that we had him as long as we did. And that's the way I look at Eric, the same way I look at Don. It's also nice to be with Danny Marshall. Thank you, Danny, for all your service as you all head back into the Lion's Den in January. God bless you and good luck. And then finally, I wanted to just recognize Linda. Of course, everybody knows Linda Green, our district director. Thank you for all your work. And we have a new partner on our staff in Danville, Anna Claire Turpin. You want to stand up, Anna Claire, so everybody can see you? Sorry. But I want you all to get to know her because obviously she will be working with Linda in our district office here in Danville and is doing a great job for us. But obviously her responsibility among others will be to be sort of the eyes and ears of our office and make sure that we're where we need to be serving the people that we represent, and that of course is you. So I hope if you haven't had a chance for her to meet you, I hope that you'll take that opportunity before you leave. Let me just talk a little bit about the 113th Congress. So, of course, I'm finishing up my second term, fourth year, and the 113th Congress, I think, was dominated, at least from my standpoint, by issues that I think are important to all of us. I look at my responsibilities as a member of Congress and a representative of the people to be a voice for and deliver service to the people that I represent. And I think that we all would agree that the issue that has dominated really since I was first elected in 2010 has been the economy. It's been jobs in the economy. I think has been the most immediate focus of or needs to have been the most immediate focus for our community. But I think also, obviously, there's a long-term concerns that we have about the debt and deficit and those things that affect our long-term global competitiveness and frankly just the sustainability of a government that has borrowed $18 trillion and has literally $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities going forward when you look at our retirement programs, when you look at health care programs. And so these are huge issues that we face in Washington. With respect to jobs and the economy, I think of three things that have been important, debates that have been important. One has been energy. I think that if you look at how important energy is, and I travel across our huge district, it's 10,000 square miles, 23 counties and cities, runs from North Carolina all the way up to Fauquier County in the north, and from Martinsville, Henry County to Lawrenceville in the east. As I travel around, one of the big things that we see that really makes it difficult, especially for our manufacturers, for our farmers, has been, and of course working families, has been the cost of energy. And so I think that one of the things that we have talked a whole lot about in the House of Representatives have been to look for ways in a way that we protect the environment, protect public safety, but at the same time make it easier for us to take advantage of the tremendous natural resources that we have in this country. We are now seeing some of the benefits of that as the natural gas, I don't want to say explosion, that connotates the wrong, I think gives the wrong connotation, but it really has been, but it has been, it has been a wonderful thing, and it has been a complete and this is not because of the government interest. You know, it's important to notice this is in spite of the government that we have seen the innovation, American innovation, in being able to take advantage of these tremendous resources that 10 years ago people thought we would never be able to access. But because of American innovation, because of American investment, capital investment, we've been able to see natural gas prices, and I think also we're seeing oil prices are affected, being affected as well, things that we've not seen before. And so what does that mean for us? It means that people who are manufacturing or farming, it means that they have more money to be able to reinvest in their company, reinvest in technology, reinvest in more innovation to create the products that we all depend on. And as I travel across the 58, we had a 58 tour. I guess it was maybe in the fall. We were one of the things that the folks that we talked to, especially in the Martinsville-Henry County area, where you have manufacturing there, the idea that natural gas prices are and there's a greater supply and lower prices, more stable prices, that's a tremendous opportunity for manufacturing, not only because they those manufacturers depend on natural gas constituents to make their products, polymers and plastics and those sorts of things, but also, of course, because it means that you have a lower cost of fuel for the manufacturing process. And that's such an exciting thing, and I really do think that it means for places like Southside Virginia and all across the 5th District, all across Virginia, we have an opportunity to take advantage of that. So I think that that's been something that we focused on. Obviously, the Keystone Pipeline has become sort of a touchstone for that, but I do think that that is a good example of the kind of legislation that I think the American people completely support. We've had problems with the administration in terms of the State Department and other agencies that have held this up, and I think that one of the things that we'll see in the 114th Congress will be some action on that, and I look forward to that. I think the people want that, and I think it's the right thing for this country. When you think about jobs in the economy and how important they are to a place like Virginia's 5th District, where we still have places with unemployment as high as 10%, clearly we need job growth. But the other thing that we need, if we want to pay down our $18 trillion in debt, if we want to eliminate our deficit spending, because remember, we're still borrowing, on top of that $18 trillion in debt, we're still borrowing 15 cents on every dollar we spend just to support the current government programs. We can't keep doing that. We can't keep doing it. At some point, we have to turn it around, and I would suggest to you that the only way that we're going to be sure that we do that is to make sure that our economy is booming. So I think that energy is a big issue from that standpoint. The second thing that I would talk about, and I know there's some bankers here, I would suggest to you that access to capital is so important, and that's something that I have had a good view on as a member of the Financial Services Committee. So I'm on the Financial Services Committee. I've been on that committee since I was first elected. It's banking and insurance, some housing is its jurisdiction. But one of the things that I get asked from time to time, and some of you probably heard me say this before, people will say, well, what in the world are you doing on the banking committee? It seemed like to me you ought to be on the agriculture committee looking at your district. You know, the bottom line is we're not going to create any jobs anywhere unless you have access to capital, unless you have putting private capital on the street to create the jobs that we've got to have. And so that's something that's very important to me. Dodd-Frank, which most of you I'm sure are familiar with, has been a tremendous damper, I would suggest to you, on our capital markets. The ability of individuals and businesses to either access capital through banks, through borrowing, or in our equity markets, and being able to issue stock and being able to raise capital in that way. Both of those ways are extremely important, and a lot of the work that we've done over the last 113th Congress has been focused on trying to not repeal Dodd-Frank. There are some who say we should repeal it. I'm not one who believes, frankly, that we should necessarily repeal the whole thing in toto, but man, it needs some work. It really needs some work. And when I was first elected, Barney Frank was actually the ranking member on our committee, and he was pretty defensive about his bill, about his legislation that's got his name on it. And so I don't think it was a coincidence that during the first 2 years for sure, and I think actually for the entire time I've been in Congress, I don't think that we've actually, until the TRIA bill, the Terrorism Risk Insurance bill that was passed the House, and the omnibus budget that was passed that had some dealings with the use of derivatives by big banks. Until that bill passed, I don't know that the door has ever been cracked on amending Dodd-Frank in any way, shape, or form. And again, to me, when you talk about trying to reduce the regulatory burden on capital, what that means is not necessarily, or not really in any way, shape, or form, saying, okay, let's open the doors to Wall Street and all the speculators and all the big bad things that we think about when you think about, you know, the worst case scenario on Wall Street. What you're talking about is reducing the cost for consumers, because at the end of the day, that's who has to pay the price of overregulation when it comes to our banking system and to in our capital markets. That's who has to pay more. It's each of us here as individuals or businesses that have to pay more for capital, and at the same time, we have fewer choices, because at some point, institutions say, you know what, or companies who are trying to raise capital in the private market, they just say, you know what, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it to us. So the consumer suffers, and the person who's looking for a job suffers. And I think that that's the real cost. And so, again, I'm not one who believes that we should repeal Dodd-Frank, but we definitely need to make some changes to it. I've introduced several pieces of legislation that would incrementally, I think, move us in the right direction. And we've been successful with those bills, but we've had a problem getting those things done in the Senate. And I'll talk about that in a second. But we've had the problem getting those bills passed in the Senate. But again, I think it's because there are those who believe Dodd-Frank doesn't go far enough. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, who you all may be familiar with, you know, she's one who believes that, you know, we're just starting on regulating capital in this country. And that's what she'd like to see. I think that we need to be going, and I think, frankly, most people believe we ought to be going in the other direction. And then the last thing that I think that I would mention is just regulatory reform generally. And again, I'd start by saying that from this standpoint, just saying that I'm not one that believes that we shouldn't have any regulations at all. But I do think it's our responsibility to be responsive to our constituents and to make sure that our regulatory structure makes sense and is rooted in common sense. And far too often, and I think that you see this when you talk to people on the street, they believe that Washington has become so far removed from any reality that they live in, and they believe that Washington has become too far removed from them, and it's expressed. That unreasonableness, I think, is expressed in a lot of the regulations that we see. Some of them are outdated, outmoded, duplicative, certainly often unnecessary, costly. And those are things that we need to work on in a bipartisan way. We need to look for ways to make those regulations, that regulatory structure, more efficient. One of the things that I think that of a local issue that I've had the opportunity to work with many people in this room on deals with the Corps of Engineers and the way it has misinterpreted, I believe, the Clean Water Act in a way that costs those who are trying to create the jobs, those who are in the local government, who are in the economic development agencies, has costs millions of dollars on top of what they already have to spend just to move the first scoop of dirt. and add months, if not years, to projects for what I would say is absolutely a misinterpretation of the Clean Water Act. And so one of the bills that we introduced deals with, and we'll reintroduce it next cycle, next Congress, but deals with getting the law straight and sending a clear message to the Corps of Engineers that this, and to the EPA, that this is the way that this statute must be interpreted. It's common sense, but when you look at a project like the Commonwealth Crossing over in Martinsville, Henry County, and the success that we finally had in prevailing upon them, that their approach was wrong, and that was something that I was able to work on with Morgan Griffith, Senator Warner, and Senator Kane, an excellent bipartisan working group. We were able to prevail upon them ultimately, along obviously with the hard work of all the local officials, but finally able to prevail upon them. Their approach to this, to the site development was wrong. And it's my hope that we will continue to be able to take that same bipartisan effort, because we're going to reintroduce the bill, I feel certain, at least certainly I am, and I feel certain that Senator Warner, Senator Kane, and Congressman Griffith will want to do so. But hopefully it'll be able to deal with the Pittsylvania County Danville issue, the Berry Hill Park, because unfortunately that's hooked up into, it's got the same problems. It's facing the same prospects. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that. But that's an example, I think, of overall regulatory reform. You look at the health care law. I was talking to a fellow last night, or night before last, who said that as a consequence of the president's health care law, that he's got 13 employees in his small business, great business right here locally, says his health insurance premiums tripled in 1 year, as a consequence of the president's health care law. Not because he has over 50 employees, but because he has to comply, if he offers it to his employees, he has to comply with the mandates. And in order to pay for the mandated health care coverage, his health care premiums went up, tripled, and as a consequence, he had to make a very difficult decision about whether or not he offered health care insurance to his employees anymore. And he had to make the decision that he couldn't afford it. It was either offer it and go out of business, or not offer it and say to them, I value you, I've always offered this to you, but I cannot afford to do it, and at the same time make this business a success and have jobs for you at all. What a terrible, terrible situation to find yourself in, and we hear that all the time. I think it's important for us, certainly in the next 2 years, to try to address those issues as best we can, understanding full well this president's not going to sign a repeal of that bill, but at least try to do everything we can to minimize that. The last thing I'll say, and then I really would like to open it up for questions, is that the landscape for Virginia has changed dramatically, and it will change going into the 114th. And the reason for that is number one, we will have lost Eric Cantor, Jim Moran, and Frank Wolf. And the combined legislative seniority and just leadership power that goes along with that makes our prospects in Virginia a whole lot harder. Now, that's not saying that we can't do more, and we will do more. We'll do the best that we can, but it changes the field for us dramatically. And so what it means is, and frankly, with the change in the majority between the Virginia, in the change in the majority between in the Senate, also has an effect on the ability of Senators Kane and Senators Warner to be effective. Frankly, the good thing is that they I'm sure still will have a good working relationship with the White House. But you stop and you think about all that, and you think about the economic challenges that we face as a state. You think about the long-term fiscal challenges we face as a nation. Virginia depends a great deal on Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads for a lot of the federal spending that takes place in those places, mainly related to national defense. Now, the reason I say all that is to say that as we go through those those times, we have to be as sharp and as effective and as hardworking as possible to make sure Virginia is always at the forefront of good things that are happening in this country and not the recipient of bad news. So it's going to be a challenge. There's no question about it. The reason I say all this is obviously it's incumbent upon us as members of the House of Representatives and the Senate to work as hard as we can together to do good things for Virginia, and I'm committed to that. And I know that each of you all who are members of this organization agree with that. Not only agree with it, but you expect it, you demand it of us, and I appreciate that. And then I'll close by saying this: all of that I say to highlight the vital importance that the Chamber continue to be a clarion voice for common sense in Washington, in Richmond, and here at home. And I've been in the state legislature and in the federal legislature now for over 10 years, and I've always had a fantastic relationship with the Chamber. But more important, I've always relied so much on your advocacy on these issues that are so important. And I think that with the challenges we face as a state going forward, we're all going to need to double our efforts to make sure that we're effective and that your voices are heard and acted on. So with that, I'm happy to open up for questions. Is that okay? Laurie, is that right? Good to answer questions. It's a good breakfast. Maybe Linda. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Linda, did you some beverage for breakfast? Well, I know everybody has schedules, and sir, I'll be here for the next few minutes. Happy to talk to anybody individually. But again, thank you for the invitation. I hope that everybody here has a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to all of my friends who are here, and I hope that you will remember that if there's anything that we can ever do for you, that you will be sure to be in touch with us. Our hurt.house.gov is our website, very easy to come find. 308 Craghead Street, right downtown. Love to see you anytime. And as Laurie pointed out in her very nice introduction, anytime that you're in Washington, I take it personally if you don't come see me. So come see us. Thank you.